Okay, have you ever tried to use a government website,
Oh, yeah.
like maybe for figuring out a tax credit or something, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
you need a PhD just to understand how it works?
Totally.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today. We're
Yeah.
diving into the Canada.ca Content Style Guide,
Right.
specifically the section about plain language. We're
Interesting.
going to unpack how this can help us as public servants better serve Canadians.
Yeah.
I've got an expert in plain language communication here with me today.
Happy to be here.
Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So I found this quote from Chelsea Donahue, who was one of the folks behind the updates.
Okay.
And she said, plain language is a writing approach to communicate what your audience needs to know. It doesn't oversimplify or strip meaning from content.
Right.
I really like that
Yeah.
because it really emphasizes that we're not dumbing down information.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a common misconception. It's
Yeah.
not about simplifying the information itself. It's about simplifying how we present it.
Okay.
It's like building a bridge,
Yeah.
between the information and the people who need it.
Right.
We're empowering citizens, not talking down to them.
I like that, building a bridge.
Yeah.
It seems like they really put a lot of effort into getting these updates, right?
Oh, yeah?
They put together a whole bilingual working group
Mm-hmm.
with plain language experts from across the government.
Absolutely.
They even brought in Accessibility Standards Canada and the Treasury Board Secretariat.
That's right.
Like, this was a real team effort.
It really was.
And it shows how much they value making government information accessible
For sure.
to everyone,
Everyone.
especially when you think about how much of our communication happens online.
Right.
We all know people scan websites very quickly, looking for specific information.
Yeah.
So in that context, why is plain language so important?
Well, think about it from a citizen's perspective.
Oh,
They have a specific goal in mind.
right.
They're coming to renew their driver's license,
Yeah.
figure out a benefit program, whatever it may be.
Right.
And they need to find that information quickly and easily.
Yeah.
Plain language helps us to respect their time
Okay.
and avoid needless frustration.
So how do we do that?
Well,
How do we make sure that the information is easy to find and easy to understand?
sure.
I mean, we're dealing with complex topics here.
Yeah, this is where structure comes in.
Okay.
So the updated style guide talks about the inverted pyramid structure,
Okay.
which is all about putting the most important information first.
So, like, the headline of a news article.
It
Get
gets
to the point right away.
Get to the point.
Yeah.
You start with the key takeaway, the main point,
Okay.
and then as you move down the page,
Yeah.
you provide the supporting details,
Mm-hmm.
the background information.
Okay.
Imagine trying to find information, say, about a passport application.
Okay.
You don't want to have to wade through paragraphs of legalese
Right.
before you find the information you actually need.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
So lead with what people need to know,
Yes,
and then you fill in the details.
exactly.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Something that kind of surprised me in these updates
Oh, yeah.
was this advice on readability formulas.
Mm.
They were saying we shouldn't rely on them too much.
Right.
It's kind of this myth
Yeah,
that readability formulas are like the magic bullet for clear writing.
right.
But it's not that simple.
Yeah, they can be useful as a starting point,
Sure.
but they don't always capture the nuances of language, especially when we're dealing with technical topics.
Yeah, and they point out that sometimes these formulas will prioritize shorter words over more precise ones,
Right.
which can actually lead to more confusion, not less.
Exactly.
I mean, I think we've all seen examples of that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you might end up with something that's technically readable,
Right,
but completely inaccurate.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, if readability formulas aren't everything,
Uh-huh.
what should we focus on instead when using plain language?
One of the big things is explaining technical terms clearly,
Okay.
which is something we deal with all the time, right?
For sure.
Government work comes with its own special vocabulary.
Right.
We can't assume that everyone knows what we mean.
Right, like applying for a grant
Mhm.
or navigating healthcare benefits. There's so much jargon.
So much.
Yeah.
That's where plain language becomes crucial.
Okay.
It's about taking those complex terms and explaining them in a way that anyone can understand, not just defining them,
Right.
but really making them accessible.
So let's say I'm working on a website about passport applications.
Okay.
How would I apply this idea of explaining technical terms clearly?
Okay.
Give me a real-world example.
Let's take the term guarantor.
Okay.
We use it all the time in passport applications.
Right.
But someone who's never applied for a passport before
Yeah.
might have no idea what that means.
Right.
So instead of just using the term,
Okay.
you could say something like, a guarantor is someone who can vouch for your identity.
Okay.
and sign your application form. They must have known you for at least 2 years.
Ah, I see.
Right.
So you're anticipating where someone might get tripped up
Exactly.
and proactively giving them the information they need.
Yeah.
It's like building that bridge.
Building that bridge.
Yeah.
The style guide even suggests using examples to illustrate these terms,
Go ahead.
which can be really helpful, especially for visual learners.
So instead of just saying, submit your supporting documents,
Right.
you could say, supporting documents include things like your birth certificate, proof of residency, and previous passport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're painting a clearer picture
Right.
and making the process less intimidating.
Right, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Exactly.
Making it easier for people to interact with their government
Yep.
and get the services that they need.
That's it.
And I think there's a bigger picture here, too.
Absolutely.
It's not just about making websites easier to use.
Right. It's about something more fundamental.
Yeah, it's about building trust and transparency
Okay.
between the government and its citizens.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for me.
When we communicate clearly and respectfully,
Yeah.
we're showing people that we value their time
Mm-hmm.
and we value their understanding.
Okay.
It fosters a sense of openness and accessibility,
Right.
which helps build a stronger relationship
Yeah.
between the government and the people it serves.
Because if people are constantly struggling to understand what their government is saying, it can lead to frustration,
Right.
mistrust,
Yeah,
and even disengagement.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Clear communication is essential for an informed and engaged citizenry.
And that's something that we should all be striving for.
Yes.
Not just for efficiency's sake,
Right.
but for the health of our democracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other practical tips from the style guide?
Oh, tons.
Okay.
They talk about things like writing in the active voice.
Using clear headings and subheadings,
Right.
avoiding jargon,
Mm-hmm.
and overly complex sentence structures.
So it's a pretty comprehensive toolkit for clear communication,
It is.
specifically tailored for government.
Yes.
Let's talk about active voice for a second.
Okay.
I know it's something that people emphasize a lot when writing,
Yeah.
but why is it so important, especially for government communications?
Active voice makes your writing more direct
Okay.
and easier to understand.
Oh, yeah.
It puts the emphasis on the action
Right.
and who is doing the action.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying,
Yeah.
applications will be reviewed by the committee, which is passive voice.
Right.
You could say,
Yeah.
the committee will review applications,
Okay.
which is active voice.
Right. So you're cutting out the middleman.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
It makes sentences shorter, more impactful, and
Yeah.
easier to digest,
Okay.
especially when we're talking about things like instructions
Yeah.
or guidelines.
Right.
Active voice can make a huge difference in terms of clarity.
And I imagine that can help reduce confusion and frustration
Absolutely.
for people who are trying to follow those instructions.
Exactly. It's about respecting their time
Yeah.
and making it as easy as possible for them to get what they need
Right.
from the government.
And that ultimately should be our goal as public servants. Right.
It should.
To serve the public effectively.
Yes.
And it sounds like these updates to the style guide are giving us the tools to do that.
They are.
We obviously can't cover everything in this deep dive.
Right.
Is there anything else that you want to highlight before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that using plain language isn't just the responsibility of communications teams
Okay.
or web developers.
Right.
Everyone who communicates with citizens has a role to play, whether it's through emails, letters, forms, or websites.
Right.
It's about making sure that government information is clear and understandable.
That's a really good point. It's about fostering a culture of clear communication across the board.
Across the entire government
Yeah.
is something that we can all contribute to,
Right.
regardless of our role or experience.
And it's about recognizing that even small changes in our communication can have a big impact on people's lives.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, right?
Yes,
Making a positive difference for the people that we serve.
exactly. Yeah, it's not about the words themselves.
It's inspiring to think about the impact we can have.
It's about making a difference.
As public servants,
Yeah.
when we really commit to clear communication,
For sure.
it's not just words on a page or a website.
Right.
It's about making a real difference in people's lives.
It is.
The Canada.ca Content Style Guide really emphasizes that
Yes.
by reminding us to focus on the user's needs. What does that actually mean?
Well, it means shifting our perspective.
Well,
Instead of starting with, what do we want to say?
Right.
We start by asking, what does the reader need to know?
Yeah.
So we let go of our assumptions
Yeah.
about what people should know
Right.
and really put ourselves in their shoes.
So it's about empathy then.
It is.
Understanding where the reader is coming from, what
Yeah.
they're trying to accomplish.
That's exactly.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
Sure. Let's say we're communicating about eligibility criteria for a program.
Okay.
Instead of just listing the criteria in a dry, technical way,
Yeah.
we could think about it from the user's perspective.
Oh.
Like, what are the most common questions that they have?
Right.
What are their concerns?
Mhm.
What information do they absolutely need
Okay.
to make an informed decision?
So then we structure our content
Exactly.
around those needs,
Yes.
and we make sure that the most important information is easy to find.
Front and center.
Kind of like that inverted pyramid approach we were talking about.
Exactly. It's about putting the user
Yeah.
at the heart of the communication process.
And when we do that,
Yeah.
it can transform their entire experience with the government. It can't imagine a world where dealing with the government wasn't so daunting
Right.
or confusing.
Yeah.
People would feel confident going to government websites,
Mhm.
understanding their rights,
Yes.
accessing the services that they need.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful vision,
It is.
and it's something that is within our reach
Yeah,
if we commit to clear and effective communication.
for sure.
And these updates to the style guide are a huge step in the right direction.
They are.
It's a really valuable resource
Mm.
for anyone who wants to improve their communication
Yes.
and make a difference in people's lives.
Exactly.
But it's not just about reading the guide, right?
Right.
It's about putting these principles into practice.
Absolutely.
We need to keep talking about plain language,
Yes.
sharing these best practices,
For sure.
and encouraging each other to embrace this approach.
Exactly, because plain language
Yeah,
is about more than just words on a page.
it is about more.
It's about building a more inclusive, accessible, and responsive government for everyone.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I agree.
I want to thank all of you for joining us
Yes, thank you.
for this deep dive into plain
It's
language.
been great.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights
We hope so.
and are feeling inspired to make a difference in your work.
Make a difference.
Thanks again for joining us.
And remember, even small changes in our communication can make a huge impact.